Welcome to Science with Soul. I'm Dr. Lottie Valentine and the host of this podcast. I'm a physician, evidential psychic medium, international keynote speaker, and author of Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul, an inspirational story about transformation, healing, and spirituality, available online at Amazon as well as other online platforms worldwide. The inspiration for this podcast came from my own life experiences. As I have journeyed through life, it has taught me that we're part of a greater divine web of interconnectedness. I have walked the path of illness, healing, and transformation. After two near death experiences, I became clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient, and was guided to attend medical school at the age of 54. We will be meeting with many different types of doctors, healers, as well as spiritual leaders, educators, and other inspiring souls in this podcast. It is my hope that you will gain information and create a path to healing your own life, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and bridge the gap between science and soul. If you are a person who understands the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and would like to take one of my courses or work with me to create a path of healing your own life, please visit divinespiritualessence.com or drlottie.com. Welcome to Dr. Lottie's Science with Soul. Today, I'm excited to introduce Alan Stevenson. Alan Stevenson is a former 25-year chef, best-selling published author who has helped hundreds of people the world over due to his near-death experience. February 26, 2010 was a day plagued by severe snowstorms near Niagara Falls, Canada. Alan had managed to walk 6 city blocks that morning to catch a bus to work in knee-deep snow that was piling up by the minute, only to die a minute after getting on the bus. Doctors gave him 2 years at best to live, and that was 11 years ago. Alan recently remarried in the islands of the South Pacific and has 2 daughters he refers to as gems of his life. He now quietly lives in Guelph, Ontario, Canada, while working on republishing his first book and writing 3 others in a series, Life Lessons of an NDE. So welcome, Alan. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Oh, and I am absolutely thrilled to be here, and to do this with you has been, it's great, and I know this show's going to go great.
So tell us what happened that day. You walked all that way in knee-deep snow, only to die a minute after you got on the bus. What happened?
Well, that fact alone was pretty miraculous, just because there was absolutely nobody around. I mean, not a single soul out in that kind of weather. No cars, no people, no businesses open, no nothing that I could actually turn for help. And had it actually happened, I probably would have maybe passed out, become unconscious in some form or manner. And I would have literally, with the way the snow was coming down, probably been covered in minutes. So no one would have saw me. And that in itself is a very big fact. But let's back it up a little bit, because we'll get to a few important facts. First is that the whole situation was actually taking, it started 3 days earlier. And this is one of the reasons why you see doctors advise on a regular basis, if you're having this, and this symptom for more than a 24-hour period, you're serious. You need to go and get it checked out and get it looked at. But of course, I didn't know. I really didn't know.
Yeah, what symptoms were you experiencing for 3 days?
Well, we all write it off into indigestion and this and that, heartburn. Heartburn is a bad sign, especially once it starts to continue. There's a reason why you're having a burning sensation in your heart, and they always chalk it up to acid reflux. Sorry, no. That is a burn in the muscle tissue of the heart itself. When you get like when the burn becomes almost like a stabbing, that's you need to get in there and keep your keep a pulse going and know what your pulse is like. if it is slowed down with those conditions. I'm not an MD, so I shouldn't really be opening my mouth too much. But so anyway, I knew that the situation, it started a good 3 days before and slowly got worse. And then I was scheduled to go back to work, and I was working as a professional baker at the time in a very large grocery chain here in Canada. So that morning I got up. I was very sluggish to begin with. It was hard to get dressed. The weather, there was one snowstorm that whole season, and it just happened to be that day. And that was February 26, 2010. I got up, I got dressed. My younger brother and I had a bad argument a couple days before. So I knew I needed help. I really knew that I needed help. But I was like, you know what? I'm not asking him because he's not going to, she's going to be suck it up, buttercup, and get your butt to work. So I never bothered asking. But situations like that, and I'm pretty sure that your listeners and you yourself probably know that there's situations that come about in our physical life that just create a sadness that is different because it's a soul central core portion of your soul, which I refer to as the heart. Everybody goes, your heart. I heart my life, and it's just a muscle it's a pump, run by electricity, and that's it. So when you get that sadness right at the core of your soul, that is the heart of your soul. It's the core point where everything originates, comes and flows from. So anyway, that day I stepped out into the weather, and it was just one brick after another that was hitting me, mentally, emotionally, physically. Nothing was plowed. There was no sidewalks plowed or anything like that. Snow was still coming down like crazy. And the heartburn was growing by the minute. So, being a little ignorant of the whole situation and what was really going on, I thought, well, I'll just go and get some acid tablets. And we stopped at the store. The guy at the store was actually a paramedic in Serbia, but wasn't allowed to be one over here in Canada because it's English. But I'm telling you, his English was just no different than mine. So anyway, I didn't stop to think of that because he was well aware of my condition going downhill. And I don't know whether my coloring was already off a bit or not. I don't really think that it was too bad at that point because let's face it, I made it another nearly 6 blocks to get on the bus. And it was a heck of a journey to get that 6 blocks in the snow. It was really, really serious. And then I got to the bus. The bus was late. I started fearing that I had missed it. Then it did show up. And this is where the situation gets very serious because I stepped up on the bus steps, dropped the coins into the coin holder for the ride to work, and I went to turn. The bus lurched away in the snow because the wheels were more than half buried. More than half buried. And once I did, it lurched, and that's when whatever took place in my heart that finished closing off the important artery that supplies the heart muscle itself with blood and oxygen became 100% blocked. I didn't know that at the time. I sat in the seats just behind the bus driver. And for those who don't know, diaphoretic means that you profusely sweat in kind of an oddball way. Here it is very, very cold out, and I'm sweating tanks. So I had to muster up all my strength, everything I could possibly do to pull off my hat, my gloves, my coat, and start and try and, but I could hardly move. I literally could hardly move. But once I got my stuff off, I was sitting there and I was looking down at my feet, and I'm arguing with myself about asking for help. I didn't want to inconvenience anybody with the problems that I was having. So I just I mean, now here's where the intervention comes in. You know, from kind of being slouched over a little bit, looking down at my feet, and I looked up at the mirror that's for the bus driver, and her eyes were right on mine. As soon as I looked up, she was already looking at me, because I guess she saw me disrobing and everything. And she goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Can you call 911?" She goes, "Why?" While she's reaching for the phone. And I said, "I'm having a heart attack." And the funny thing is I'd never had one, but I instinctively knew that I was, you know. I went back to looking at my feet. I looked at a woman across from me who was absolutely horrified, just absolutely horrified, and clutching her purse to her chest tightly and everything, and looking over at me, and her eyes as big as saucers. And I knew, oh, I guess I really looked bad. And this, obviously at this time, I must have been that very slate blue, a bad slate blue color, due to lack of oxygen and whatnot. So it was, then I looked back at my feet and I thought, so this is kind of what it's like to die. And that's when the peace settled in. The peace had already settled in. You know, my mind had been going a mile a minute, and like a roller coaster, it was going to come right off the tracks. And then all of a sudden, everything was mentally peaceful, slowed down, dots slowly joining one after another calmly, no big deal. And then next thing I knew, noticed a little bit of pressure and stuff, and I just slid out of my body. But I didn't slide and like two people sitting side by side. It was just, I was still kind of half mixed and mingled. But I remember putting my hands up and looking and going, oh, this is kind of weird. And actually, the first thing that actually happened is everything went black. Then the hole opened up. A little opening. It was very, very clear. And it was all misty in around it. And then that's when I noticed the slide. Right after I went through my amazement, this tiger steps onto the bus. Good 6 foot tall at the shoulder, and I'm like, you know, what are you doing here? It's a blizzard out. And didn't say anything to me, and I had met this individual being 2 other times in my life. He just walked up to me, rubbed his head, this great big, huge head, up against mine, backed up, and from his mind to mine, he just said, well, you're going to die. You know, and I wanted to say, like, no kidding. But he said, if you choose. So here I am dumbfounded. I am literally dumbfounded. Like, I'm figuring, I'm already dead. This is it. You know, and this is cool. You know, I can handle this. I can deal with this. So then, you know, he starts rolling pictures from my past and my present, and it was just like a casino thing, just rolling. But I'm catching each and every one, just like it. You know, I've got a half an hour to look at each one, but they're rolling fast. So just that fact, I'm like, this is kind of odd. The woman that was sitting there is no longer sitting there. I never saw her move. I never saw her leave. Nothing. And finally, after going through some future events, it stopped on pictures of my daughter. A lot of people turned around and said, well, don't you think that they kind of guilted you into coming back? And I went, no. No, they just showed me what was important. What was, what is, what will be. And here is another important factor to consider. So I wasn't guilted into it by any means. I could have easily have just chose. Let's face the fact, 99.99997% of all people throughout history just kept on going. And Tiger left the choice to me and then said, you know, you all have a choice. Where you've been, where you are, where you're heading, it's all your choice. And I said, well, I want to stay. And of course, thinking that I made a huge mistake, meaning there, I went, no, I want to live. I seriously and honestly, I want to live. So Tiger said, okay, now you have a task. Without saying anything else, he just turned, but didn't really turn, left the bus, and I instinctively knew that I had to follow. And that was the important thing. So I followed him, and we went on to a place. Like, he just kind of arrived and turned up ahead in front of me a little bit on an angle. I got there, and of course it's just mist and some light, and I'm like, where's the light coming from? No, I didn't see any source. It was just, it's like all the mist was its light itself, was the light itself. So there was no one given point where the light was coming from. And then they proceeded to, that's where the three beings had come in. That's another bit of a story, which will be covered in is covered in my book, and we'll get to that later. But yeah, they started a three-dimensional, like, holographic type of edification. And I know I was dead for 10 minutes because it was 9:25 a.m. roughly when they got there, yeah, it was 9:25 basically when I died, and 9:35 when the paramedics had showed up. So I was dead for 10 minutes, but I spent roughly about a whole day's worth of happenings on the other side. And then after the edification process, Tiger brought me back to the bus, and that was the basis of the story. Now the story's covered much more in depth of my book and that, which we're going to do a special offering for all of you people that are listening. If you want to go to alanrstevenson.com and just go to the contact page, send me a contact form, and then I will immediately, myself or someone else will send you a copy of the book for free.
That's great. What a great opportunity to read, to learn from your story. And then what happened? Did you end up in the hospital after?
Yeah. I guess we should touch on that story, as we had alluded to a little bit earlier. Is they took me. How I know that it was 10 minutes, that I was dead for 10 minutes, was that from the time the bus driver picked up, I'd asked the paramedics how long it took them to respond due to the snow and stuff. I don't know why I asked that. I really don't. It was an oddball question for the situation and given in. And they said it was about 10 minutes because we weren't that far from the hospital, to be honest. But just the depth of the snow and everything was causing havoc. And it took them 10 minutes. So I know I dropped dead. And then when I came back from the edification, I came to, and all the pain and everything came back. And that's when the paramedics first stepped on the bus. So I know that there was a 10-minute window from the time I actually died, left my body, and the time the paramedic was first stepping on the bus. So it was like 9:25, and it was 9:35 then.
And then did they take you to the hospital, or?
Yeah, they rushed me. They rushed me down to the St. Catharines General Hospital, which is just outside of Niagara Falls, Ontario, and they proceeded to pump me full of everything they possibly could, and pills and spray and injections and this and that, and it was just opening packages and flying them all over the place. And then I was sitting. They had me propped up a little bit on the gurney, which was in a hallway, trying to decide what they were going to do with me. I had a nurse, I had two of the paramedics still standing there helping with everything, do everything. And then all of a sudden, the nurse kind of stepped, and the one paramedic at the end of the bed stepped and moved aside. Why, I don't know. It was like they were there for a little while, you know. And then all of a sudden they parted, and then I see this little Korean short ER doctor down the end of the hallway come barreling around. I mean, he grabbed a hold of the door jamb, trying to make the corner into the hallway, and he's like, go, get him out of here, get him out of here. He ain't gonna make it. Get him going. They're gonna take him in Hamilton. So They rushed me to Hamilton, and that's another, at a regular drive, it's a good 40-minute drive. But we made it there pretty quick. Now, the major highways were plowed, and the trucks were constantly plowing. So that wasn't too bad. There was times where I did feel it slide and skid a little bit, and I got a funny feeling that they were probably doing a good 120 or so, maybe more. I don't know. I was guessing. Once I got to the Hamilton hospital, they rushed me in through the snow, and I didn't have nothing on me. I was all hooked up, and I had all the pasties on me and everything. And the nurse was still running with the nitro or some other kind of a spray and asked me to open up and stuff. Rushed me through the snow into the hospital, didn't stop nowhere, just straight into the OR. They stripped me down and prepped me for surgery. And that was just surgery for the stents. But the doctor they had done some other stuff. And I guess I wasn't totally aware of that because I was in a little bit of a dopey state. And the one thing that really stands out in my mind is where the young-looking surgeon comes over to me and he asks, like, here I am, totally stripped, totally vulnerable, sitting on the gurney, on the OR table. And he's going like, what the hell are you doing on my table, man? Like, I was 47 at the time. I was in extremely good, healthy physical condition. I looked probably a good 10, 15, 20 years younger than I really was body-wise. And I just looked at him and I said, I'm having a bad day. and that was about the best thing I could say to him. It just a quick game. That was the thing that came to my mind. And then he goes, he walked away for a bit and he comes back and he was holding on to something. I don't know whether it was an x-ray. I don't remember an x-ray being taken. I do remember something being over me, but I don't really remember an x-ray being taken. But he was holding on to something. And he says, you know what? You literally should not be here. In a serious form, like not alive, because what you've actually had is a widowmaker. Your left descending interventricular descending coronary artery is 100% blocked for a good distance. It's like, I'm not too sure why you're still breathing and talking to me right here, right now. I've seen a far less, and they never made it. So the miracles that happen, and maybe it's just been a little promoted to me that maybe the miracles that happen in our life are based on our choices. There's a statement I've never made before.
So can you elaborate on that? The choices that we make, and I know we spoke a little bit earlier about cake making and how you relate the cake making to the choices.
Actually, Audie, the cake making has a lot more. Well, I guess you're right. Your question actually is right in a lot of ways. The cake making is the way that we perceive physical reality is upside down, inside out, backwards, and every other thing. It is, and I know you've all probably heard that it is not what we believe it to be. But even scientists can't totally put a finger on it because it just doesn't make sense. 0 plus 0 equals 2. So right. We have 0 and 0, but it's adding up to something because we have a physical sense of everything in our physical lives, even ourselves, our own physical bodies. Having been a chef, I in my book, I took the concept and idea of baking a cake. So you start off with raw ingredients. The end product, the end result of a cake is nothing like what you started off with. Physical reality in our lives are the exact same, and what you actually start off with, what's flowing into being, is so very, very different. And from a science perspective, is nothingness. Now, there's lots of spiritual leaders out there and gurus and talkers that say the exact same thing, but none of them can really put a finger on the fact of how it actually flows into actually being. And it's one of the things that I tried to do In my next book, Soul, the Real You, is where we're really going to get into things. But as you flow, as the non-physical flows into being, the soul being that you actually are, the driver of everything, the primary being that we all are, not the secondary or an attachment to a physical thing. We're actually the primary being. And it all flows into being the physical. So that flowing, the non-physical into the physical, all shapes our choices. And there's a lot of levels. You got emotion, so it's E-motion. Electricity sets everything in motion. That's the prime thing where we operate from. Mind is not a place. However, it is a thing, but it is the process of connecting one thought to another to make a comprehensible, meaningful line of joined dots so that someone else can actually understand us.
Mm-hmm.
But our choices are based on the soup mix, the batter, you know. And
The batter.
Yeah. Well, getting all your ingredients right, but understanding perspective, perception promotes understanding. Understanding promotes knowing. Once you know, now you can backtrack and you can really do things for those choices. You understand where you should make this choice from or where you should make that choice from and why and how.
I love it. I can't wait for the book to come out. Do you have any date when you're trying to have this finished by?
Soul, the Real You is, I thought that with the foundation of the first book having been done, now the first book's going to go through a rewrite process, and actually my editor and I we're working on things. The book will more than likely, the rewrite of the first book will probably just be offered through my own website and stuff like that, and we'll do some promotion at some point. But up until that point, it's going to be free, the original copy, as stated before. Soul, the Real You is where, in discussion with my editor and my own thoughts and stuff like that, I thought, you know what, no one else is really defining and the difference between the driver and the car. And you know, like, mm-hmm. That's your same statement too, mm-hmm. Right? I wrote that down a long time ago. Mm-hmm. We get in and out of our cars lots, and I don't mean the physical car. I'm talking about our bodies. It happens a lot. I mean, if you ever felt yourself falling at night while you're sleeping and have that, yeah, you were out, and the shock of coming back, that falling kind of erases the memory of it, and that's why we search and search and search. But really and honestly, we've put so much as a physical society based in a physical reality. We put so much emphasis on the physical body, how we dress it, how we look after it, this and that. People do the exact same thing with their cars. So this is how the analogy kind of came to it, you know, what color paint you want, and the makeup you want on it, and the accessories, and this and that. And you see more people paying more attention to their car than to themselves, which is odd. So if you stop and think about a driver of a car, and the car only being animated when there is a driver behind the wheel. We physically only become animated when there's a driver behind the wheel. I mean, technically, this talk could go on for 3 or 4 hours, and we probably would have only just scratched on the iceberg, right? Because there is so much to talk about, there's so much to discuss, there's so much to show, there's so much to tell, there's so much to teach, and it's important that people start to understand. So many of the people that are trying to go down the spiritual path, trying to figure out life and understand it, you know, they want the warm fuzzy stuff, and I'm telling you, the warm fuzzy stuff doesn't get it done. There's several dozen words the industry uses, buzzwords that the industry uses, that really are backwards. and upside down and not true to form. Unfortunately. But the choices we make, emotion, thought process, and action.
So when you were talking about your near-death experience, you said you were out of your body for about 10 minutes, but to you, it seemed like you spent an entire day on the other side. So how do you perceive time? What does that mean? Why is it 10 minutes on this side and on the other side?
I am so amazed you asked that question, because I was kind of thinking about it just a little while ago, and a couple pauses that I did. Because there's so much. I know if I go, this dot should connect to that one and should connect to that one, but you and I only have so much time together, so I can only cover so much in this. And obviously, we're going to have to do more of these at some point. So time doesn't exist the way that we actually perceive it. Time is a tick, tick, tick in our life, but in actuality, it's not. It's only a measure of distance. So it's the measure, the sun traverses the sky, giving us a day. Light travels in a year. It's all actually a measurement of distance, not anything else. Now, how did I end up on the other side? For more than the 10 minutes I was gone. So if you draw a straight line, a vertical straight line, and then you just put times along the side of that, and then at 9:25, I sideways stepped. I could sideways step for as far as I wanted to go horizontally on that line. But I would come straight back that line, on that line, to that point in time, just 10 minutes later. So my sideways step, and I refer to it as a sideways step of physical reality, after slipping from my biological glove in the book time and time again. Mm-hmm. You can go as far as you want and then come back to that point in time. Then that time, or that line, because we're measuring distance. So that line that you rejoin and then continue on with does not mean that the sideways step didn't take place, because it did, but only in the consciousness of one bubble. Not to everybody else on that other line, on the original line. I hope that kind of helps. Do you want to try to clear that up anymore? Or is it understood?
No, I like it, because I have the same. After my near-death experience, I was just stunned that there was no time on the other side. And it made me read so many books. I read physics books, Stephen Hawking's books, trying to understand, how can there not be any time on the other side? It doesn't exist the way we interpret it in the physical reality.
We invented it, Dr. Light. We invented it. So
yeah, it's how we make sense of our life in this reality.
Well, if you go back to our beginnings, right? That's all we've done throughout the history of the human race on this planet. That's all we do. We try and make sense of stuff. And constantly within people's lives, things take place that aren't part of that routine nature of the animal that we are. So we try and justify, reason, understand, know, and then you got all these other people around there that have their literal head stuck in the sand, going la 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 la. I don't want to hear it. I don't believe in anything else other than, you know what, I'm very comfortable in this little box. Just leave me alone. And it's fine. Everybody has the right to choose to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. People need to live their lives, and the way in which they live their lives is what was intended after the fact has happened. Whatever has happened was originally meant to happen. So actually, you know what, I think, and it wasn't in one of the things that we had discussed earlier a bit, but I think that is important because of the topic that we're on. In the book, I illustrate a corridor to try and help, and this is people that I've worked with, I get them to try and understand. because their child has been taken from them at 3 years old for one reason or another. Or a 97-year-old grandparent has been, great-great-grandparent has been taken from them. Why the difference? So the difference is that when your life starts, your life can be looked at or thought of as a corridor. You know, you can put a tunnel on the top, round the top off, you can square it up, you can do whatever you want with it. Your life starts at one end, coming through a door. And as you walk, there's another door at the end, and that's the intended end that you will step through at one given point in time. But everything in the universe that must take place for that line to be totally, completely uninterrupted in any way, shape, or form, knowing that other corridors affect this one directly and indirectly, whether being crossed over or not, like two corridors matching, you know, spouses, they still have individual corridors, but they're together in a given way. So the 3-year-old will have an intended point in time due to a given, or that may have been, that's the distance of the corridor for given reasons. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be more the fact that while they're walking their corridor to an intended point, there's doors along the side. Those are alternate paths that are possible. So if things don't come together in the universe, this chaos theory and all that other stuff would come into play, and probably just, you know, I would like to see the equation for all of this, but let's skip over that. And as they proceed along, these doors, they just step through as the overall length of the intended corridor collapses. So it collapses because certain things didn't take place, maybe on the other side of the planet. And it starts to collapse. The individual soul steps through one of those doors and goes off into another direction. Now, having stepped through that door, the original intended one at the end of the corridor are 2 different points. So now that soul has gone off into a little bit of a different learning phase, because things did not take place to make that end journey of the straight line of the corridor happen. That's a toughie. That's a toughie.
It is a toughie. So would you say, all right, so we incarnate, we got our corridor, and we got all these doors on the side that are all the different options that we have. We got that door at the end of the corridor, which is the end time of our existence as we know it.
Originally intended, yes.
Now, depending on the doors that open and close on the side of this corridor, is then impacting how long or short that corridor is, whether things are taking place or, you know, that path is taking place or not. So would you say, do you feel that our end point of our incarnation in this life on Earth is predetermined, or that it has a different possibility depending on which doors in this corridor is opening up?
Yes. In answer to your question, yes. But the most important point is that in the same way that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow in our own personal lives, we can control to a certain degree the way that time unfolds. And hopefully we'll get enough time to talk about time unfolding, the way in which it unfolds. But there's an intention, an original intended point. So is it pre-planned and predetermined? No. All you can do is prep yourself the best possible way you can. If other things do not take place that need to take place to keep that line centered, focused, and walkable to its intended door at the end of the corridor, the end of what your life should have been for the given path that you're on. The soul is on. So it's the original driver that determines to a certain degree that. But the mitigating exponential factors that have to take place sometimes just don't always work out. Yeah. Is it painful and unimaginable for a 3-year-old child to die in numerous different manners, you know, from cancer and this and that. Yes, it truly and honestly is. And some of the parents that I've helped in that exact same situation, and that's why I use the 3-year-old demonstration, is that I have worked with parents, never charging a penny, never charging a penny. You know, I help them understand. Understanding creates a sense of knowing. And then once you get that foundation of understanding, and the knowing will kick in time. I can't do anything actually for that. It's a phase that the individuals go through. Parents of that situation, it took them a little while. I always opened myself that I was always free for them. I can say Nancy and Bill. I can say that.
Mm-hmm.
You know? They were totally lost. There's no other way to put it. Just totally lost. People say heartbroken, but is it really heartbroken? No, it's just lost. Time comes to a standstill in those situations. But once I got them to understand, and then Mom there was, you know, starting to tell me, you know, I'm getting messages from, right? And I said, yes. And she goes, I love you, Mommy. And once she understood that, she healed. She healed instantly because she finally understood the nature, the way things actually are. And being able to have that, and her child could now flow through to a given point through those pre-cake ingredients and understand that she could actually affect and interact with Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad, more importantly, realized the cake is and always will be the ingredients, just forever unfolding into being. It's not a case of, okay, ingredients, make a cake, ingredients gone. No, those ingredients are forever, ever, 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 ever unfolding into physical reality, and then it's gone the moment we've stepped past a given point. But those ingredients don't stop flowing. They never stop. So their child always knew of that ever unfolding, my help through the translating and getting them to understand and to help them get to a point of knowing so that they could heal was getting them to understand that fact. Once they did, their lives changed. And they did have another child.
Wow, that's just such a beautiful story. We could continue, you know, for hours. But we're gonna have to wrap up this podcast, and then you're gonna have to come back and tell us more about your next book that's coming out, the Soul, the Real You. And also you're working on another one, Spirit Translator. I can hear them from here. Can you just briefly touch upon what that is going to be about?
Yeah, that's something very different. I mean, we all know there's lots of mediums around, and on the title of the book, I actually crossed the word medium out and then put the word translator underneath, because it's befitting. It's very, very befitting. You know, I went through, and I'm still going through a learning process to more control it, because I get caught up in the moment, and rather than being firm with the soul, and it's not firm in a bad way, it's just like, you know what, you need to tell me your name, you need to tell me where you roughly lived, or the place you live, you know, if you can give me a street address. But I get lost because I get so, oh wow, it's happening again. I'm getting this message and stuff like this, so the person I'm standing by or in line behind, or, you know, oddball situations, and sometimes I've done it on purpose. I shouldn't say that. No, I've never done it on purpose. It just kind of goes. I'm still trying to learn the control of it. But you get so caught and wrapped up in it, you know, I made a horrible mistake this morning. I went out to Tim Hortons to get my coffee and a breakfast wrap and something, and somebody paid for my stuff in front of me, and I got so caught up in oh my God, you're kidding me, when I was told that my stuff was paid for, I forgot to pay for the person's stuff behind me, and then I felt bad about it after I left, because that should have been the automatic response, but I got so caught up in it. So the spirit translating, you get so caught up in, physically, hair stands up on end. So there's your biological response to the emotionalization of what is taking place because they're interacting with your soul on the other side. And that's actually how it happens. But in my book, I'm not just going to do a whole long-winded bunch of stories and this and that, which I had a mountain of books, but I just tossed them out because, you know what, they were garbage. Nobody actually explained how this actually takes place because few people can. The biggest reason why it happens with me is because I was there, I left a signature there. So they all actually know that I was there and that I understand. So they're always like, help me here. You're standing beside the person I need to talk to. And they're so shut off, they won't listen to me, and they keep getting spooked and blah, blah, blah. So the book goes into a lot of detail about a lot of little things of why and how we unintentionally shut it down. That's basically what the book is about, and to try and help more people be able to be okay with it, learn to open up to the concept of it. I know there's lots of people out there who go, I would love to be able to do this, but how? And then they just get lost in the process because it's not being explained properly.
I love it. It is fascinating because I'm meeting you for the first time today, and how parallel our journeys are running. And your analogy about the car, I have the same analogy. Got that back in the early 2000s, and finally wrote my book. It's in my book, and then controlling the messages, and I mean it's fascinating.
Why don't you, Dr. Light? Why don't you tell the listeners how we came to know of one another?
Yeah. So we were both contributing authors to Claudia Watts' Edge book, We Touched Heaven. And I read Alan's story in the book, and I said, wow, it's such a fascinating experience. You met the tiger. A lot of people meet Jesus or their father or grandparents or whatever. You met the tiger. And I really wanted to interview you on my podcast. And this is the first time that we are connecting and learning about each other's journey. And it's fascinating how similar it is, because you sort of feel, to me, it feels like, okay, well, Alan is one of the people, because I've been told for years by my spirit guides, when they've told me, this is what you need to do. You need to help the people. You need to bring healing to the people, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And I would ask the spirit world, how am I supposed to do that? How can I do that by myself? And the spirit world answer is always, oh, don't worry. When the time is right, we're going to, the people will be put in front of you. And now this is all happening. And it's fascinating to see how it's all coming together, because we're here to help all of the listeners around the entire world to create healing and to open up to that, consciousness, our spiritual evolution, really. And it's fascinating. And so here we are. And it's fascinating to hear that your messages are so similar. And your analogy is so similar too. So I can't wait to have you back on the podcast.
We'll do this again.
After you come out with your next books and re-release your first book, that I had to die to learn how to live. So that's great.
Well, there's so much stuff that we've missed that we could talk about. So we could do another one long before then.
Go into things a little bit deeper. And if the listeners, if you guys are thinking of anything that you want to hear us discuss at a deeper level, send us an email.
Good idea.
Yeah, to either Dr. Lotte, DRLOTTE, .dse@gmail.com. You can also find them on the websites. And how can people find you, Alan?
So I think the best way to get in touch with me without giving out my personal email address, which I've done in the past and found it to be a mistake, just go to Alan, ALAN, Stevenson, with an EV, not a PH, .com. And then just fill out a contact form. I mean, if you want to understand more things, you want to questions that Dr. Lottie and I can actually talk about and discuss at another date. If you need immediate help, just state so in the form itself, the contact form on the website. If you want a copy of the book, just say so, and I'll be glad to get myself or someone else to send you a copy of the book right away. Try and stay on top of those things as much as I possibly can, and it is going to be free until the rewrite is finished and the book is re-released and republished in a special author second edition. So yeah, I think that's the best thing to do, and I'm always open and I'm always here to help people. If you need help with having lost a child, having lost a parent, your life is totally stuck in a quicksand, you know, I'm always available, and I will get to you as fast as I can. We can do Zoom calls, chats, we can talk. And I'm telling you, I know that we're supposed to try and wrap this up, but it's so important. I helped a woman by the name of Susan once. She was the best top sales real estate agent 2 or 3 years in a row in a state, one of the largest states in the United States. One morning she drove over and found her son had shot himself. And that day, after she managed to get home, she didn't leave her home for 9 months. She was homebound for 9 months. I found her story and I got a hold of her. And I said, look, give me your phone number. I'll call you. We'll talk. And she's like, I don't know you. Like, you're a stranger. Why do you want to help me? Now, here's a woman that had psychologists, psychiatrists come to her home months after months with huge, huge bills. And I talked to Susan for 3 hours. 3 hours on my dime. The next day, she got up and she left her house.
Wow, that's just beautiful. So if you would like to work with Alan, go to his website. It is Alan R. Stevenson, STEVENSON.com. And this link will also be in the podcast notes, so you can just go there and click on that. And Alan, if you could give the listeners one advice on how to live their life based on your own journey and your near-death experience, what would that advice be?
Well, I know the answer is the difference in my own personal life is that I live from a soul base now, not a physical one. So all the physical stuff that I participate in is not important. Lesson number 1 from Tiger, the very, very beginning, right after I passed away, and we, you know, he point blankly told me it does not matter because I was confounded by what I was being shown. And he said, I was trying to grasp a hold of it because it was so far advanced for me. And then I was like, well, what, and he's like, it does not matter. Lesson number 1. The things you honestly think matter in your lives that you break down about and stuff, I'm telling you, does not matter. The things that we put in physical life, physical world that are important, aren't. And the second that you can ask yourself about a given situation when you become emotional about something, ask yourself, does it matter? Does it truly and honestly matter?
I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm. You'll start and participate more from the soul driver or soul being, which is the driver. Mm-hmm. You start and, it's not a remote control car, but it is a driver. Become aware of the driver, live through the driver, do your life, do your actions, do everything through that driver, which is the soul being that you primarily are. This physical life is a secondary phase. It's a learning phase. So learn, but do.
Love it. Great advice. And I want to thank you so much, Alan, for being a guest on the podcast today. It's been a true pleasure.
Oh, and you know what, Doctor, you are such a lovely, beautiful soul, and I'm so glad that we had a chance to do this. I think we both had fun.
Yeah, it's going to be, and I can't wait to have you back and go deeper into the different topics that we're trying to bring to the audience. So everybody stay
we're
tuned.
We're going to have to do segments because that's how long
Yes.
each little dig is going to be, each little hole.
Yeah, we could go on forever. We should just schedule it every 3 months.
Okay.
So
Sounds good.
Thank you again for coming on the podcast.
All right. Thank you so very, very much.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Dr. Lottie Science with Soul. To stay up to date on future episodes and to help us reach a larger audience, remember to subscribe, review, and share this podcast. If you're a person who understands the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and would like to take one of my courses or work with me to create a path of healing your own life, please visit divinespiritualessence.com or drlottie.com. My book, Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul, an inspirational story about transformation, healing, and spirituality, is available online at Amazon as well as other online platforms worldwide.